young girl and you want to play tennis. We had a Serena and Venus, but now you got a Coco Gauff, and that's what is amazing. And I love that image that they have, that video of her sitting right next to Venus, like cheering. And for her, like this, we see this like what, 15, 20, I don't know how long, all of these years later. And you see where that now she's that woman where this little girl is out in the stands. Hey y'all, it's nothing lightly. We back with another episode. We know it's been a few weeks. It's kind of not what we wanted, but we've been busy. Deaja's been working hard in medicine, and I've been doing the same. But we back. I'm C's, and this is Dee Dee, and we back with another exciting episode. We gonna give it to y'all raw, real quick. Let's talk about the playoffs. Let's talk about some track. What do we say? We're going to talk about the value of a real point guard. And we just going to let this conversation flow. Deaj, how you been while we've been on break? I've been good, really busy with other things outside of our podcast, but it's always on my mind. Like, let's get back to it. Obviously we still thinking about what's going on in the sports world, staying close to it, trying to figure out, what are our takes. And thinking about just ways to give you all our opinion. Because we haven't been able to do it, but I'm excited to do it now. So that's where my head is. That's where my head is at right now, and I'm excited to be back there. It's like coming back off of being on the bench. We back and we're ready to go. Absolutely. So let's get into these playoffs, though. Let's just get it started. What is, now that we're going into Game 5, so that Indiana Pacers in 5 is done. What do you think of that last game? And then tell me your thoughts of this series so far. So the last game, it was one play that I was watching, and I don't know which player it was, but I think it was a series deciding play. I think you can't make that type of turnover and then go back down and you miss a box out. So somebody made a bad turnover from the top of the key into the post. Instead of swinging the ball to the wing, then get it into the post. Yes, the ball should have been going into the post in that instant. He sealed the guy. But when you throw it from the top of the key, he did not have a good seal from there. That was a bad turnover. Then you come back down, you're not in a good defensive position, nor you're not boxing out. Like, the ball is up. Just get a body and boxing out. That did not happen. And I think at that point, that changed the game. At that point, OKC was only down by 1, and we know what ended up happening with that game. And to me, that was just a play. Like, you cannot miss those plays. You cannot make those bad turnovers, and then you mix the box out. That's stuff that could change a series. They literally lost because of that play. And then now, the Pacers have more on their back to now you got to go beat OKC at home. And you got to do it twice. You have to do that twice to win this series. You literally have to do that. You might have to do that twice to win this series. Or at least you got to win one here and one at your home. So it's going to be a tough battle from here for the Pacers. And I just feel like this was a series they could have honestly put away, which would have been a huge upset to OKC because they're the better team just on paper. But from what we're looking at, they're evenly matched. But when you have those 50-50 balls and making those turnovers, that changed the series. What are your thoughts so far? My thoughts are, to be honest, the Pacers, they really surprised me this series. So I'm going to just give them they ups for that. I'm going to give them their shout out. I mean, we expected this with OKC. They've had more of the straightforward path to the finals. And they've went through their teams. In the last series, they won 3-1 against, the Timberwolves, right? Indiana Pacers, that series with the Knicks could have went either way, right? We know that they came out dominant at the end. They end up winning. But I am excited for where the Pacers are. But listen, in this series, even the game that they lost, at the end, that game was taken away. Like, it kind of got away from them. But they did have a chance to be right in the mix in that game. So, really, arguably, they could have won every game. And this series would be over with. right? And especially yesterday, you'll have to learn as a team like that when you're going back and playing OKC at their home court. You got to be a championship team. Will put a team away. You don't want to send it back. Good comparison, Deasia. Dominant teams that you want to put away when you have a chance. Compare them to a Warriors team, right? Compare them to a San Antonio team back in the day. Those are teams that you do not want to see play, that you do not want to play again on your home court. When you have a chance to win on their home court, when you have a chance to win on your home court, you want to do that. And they had a chance to win. They were up late in the third. They were up early in the fourth. And then when you look at the last few minutes, the game just got away. Turnovers and just fouls, ticky-tack fouls. So you don't want to slow this team down. This team is a good free throw shooting team. And plus, who has the ball? Shea. He's shooting 86% at the free throw line in this series. In the playoffs. So you don't want to foul him. So I just kind of, I think this series is going to, I can see it going 7 games. I do think Indiana, they have to get a game, right? So I see this series being tied 3-3, and we gonna get a game 7. We'll see. What's your thoughts? Do you think it's gonna go to game 7? I think I'm unsure about that. If I just want to be honest, I can see OKC the way they ended. I think they have the momentum at this point, so I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 6 and they win. But I really don't have a dog in this fight. So either way, I would like to see 7 games just for sports, just for to see the NBA season go on. These are 2 teams we didn't expect, so that's what's interesting. If you was watching our last episode, listening to our last episode, we was completely off the mark of who we thought would make it to these finals. So that's the beauty in this, is that this is kind of like almost a college upset moment. Like, a lot of teams got upset besides OKC in the West, but on the East, who would have thought the Pacers here? Nobody. You wouldn't have thought the Pacers would be where you would be seeing this. But I must say, Deasia, now that they're here, they're not a team like, dang, they really don't deserve. No, they belong on this court. Yeah. They are playing championship basketball. Both teams are playing championship basketball. Yes, these are smaller markets, and to be honest, I'm going to go on and say I didn't pick OKC. Even though they were dominant and they had the best record, I still thought Denver, or I was even saying the Lakers had beat them every game this year. If the Lakers would have matched up, I couldn't have saw them going. So I did not pick OKC. I didn't pick either of these teams. But now watching these playoffs, watching these finals, they both belong. Well, I would say, there were more teams in the East that I could have saw. Right. Cavs. You had the Knicks. The Celtics. The Celtics. The Pacers just was not on my radar. Those other 3 teams came before them. I would have even said, there's just so many teams in the East. You got to give it even to Milwaukee. Could have been, you know what I mean, Sierra? They had some misfortune. Dane wasn't available, and he's a big part of that. Then they had some stuff going on in the locker room, so I think they had some misfortune. And that happens. Denver did too. You still got to give big ups. You got to shout out what they did. They lost their coach a few games before they go into the playoffs. So what they were still able to accomplish and what they were going for, you couldn't ask for no more than that. You still had Jokic playing like an MVP. Only reason why he didn't get it, and I'm going to go on and say this, is because Shea outplayed him to win in that series, But I do think that what Shea has done this season is undeniable, and this kind of leads us to talk about point guards, Deasia. He has arrived. And he's a new face of the league, if we want to go into that conversation. And the league needs a player like Shea. Equally, the league needs Halliburton. These stars have risen, Deasia. This playoffs have shown us new stars. Brunson. We know AE. We know Anthony Edwards. But Deasia, to see the success that Halliburton has, to see the success that Shea has had, and we said before when we was just talking, like, what's beautiful is these players have emerged post Olympics. They have emerged. When you was kind of at that phase in the Olympics. Like, wow, this might be the last time we see Steph, we see KD, we see LeBron. But now you see the passing of the torch. It's great to see Halliburton and Shea going at it, both Olympic players, right? And then Brunson, what he did putting New York on his back is huge. So I would have loved to see that finals as well. Yeah, well, while we talking about the point guards and those Halliburton, we talking about Shea, we talking about Brunson. We gotta talk about the WNBA as far as point guards. You know, we're watching that here and there, and we're looking at teams like Chicago that's struggling. I mean, the Wings were struggling, which Paige was out. She was out. You just lost a point guard. Chicago does not have a point guard, and they're struggling right now. You know, Vandersloot, she's out right now. The Chicago Sky don't have a Kennedy Carter anymore. They can come in and give them consistent buckets from the point guard position. And not only that, getting the team involved. You just don't have that consistently. Yes, Cardoza is playing amazing. Angel Reese playing amazing, but that's not enough when you're playing against the teams like the Storm, who has great point guards, and Skylar Diggins. You got Erica Wheeler coming off the bench behind her. You have that. Not even talking about Minnesota Lynx. They just lost their first game the other night. But this team was 9-0, Sierra, and why? They have a great point guard in Courtney Williams. You know, you just have that, not to mention what Queen Fee is able to do when she gets the ball from a great point guard. We're talking about this because we're saying that this position is something in the NBA where you have a LeBron coming to play all positions, or you see even Giannis, he can play almost, he can bring the ball up, you know, or you see a KD, and that kind of takes away sometimes that one position. But the one in the WNBA is very needed. And you see it in college and you see it in the WNBA. And those teams that don't have it, they struggle a little bit more, and it's showing. We was watching a podcast where they was talking about the WNBA where Chicago hasn't won a game. Really, they won one game, Sierra. And then the Wings haven't won much more. And Dejanay was asked, who did y'all beat? And they beat Chicago. And that's funny. It's, you know, it's something that you laugh about. But when you look at these teams, they don't have a solid point guard. And when Paige is out, the Wings don't have that. Arike should be coming off the two. You know, she's better without the ball coming up to me. That's a scorer. You don't need her bringing the ball up, you know? But what we're trying to say here, Diaz, and I agree with everything you're saying, is that this position is valuable. Where you see that the NBA was at some point pushing to kind of phase out this position, it's not being phased out. It's as important as it's ever been. If you compare it to the WNBA, if you compare it to college, the success that teams have in college, when you have that player that's standing in that role, can facilitate, and this sounds cliche because it's been overused, if anything, a coach on the floor. But when you have this type of player that understands the game with a high level IQ, which most good point guards have, it makes the game easier for everybody to play, and then you see the difference. And that's where, if you look in this NBA playoffs, Deasia, both of these teams have great point guards. Even the Knicks, they had a great point guard, and you can argue, Deasia, Minnesota had a great point guard. They had Conley. Like, you have veterans, but you have these dominant point guards that are rising in the NBA. So why did these teams have success when you compare it to like a Lakers team? That the Lakers, we know, have struggled in that position. You're forcing, I mean, even though they have Reeves, he's still Deasia. In some parts, I would prefer him off the ball. You look at some of the teams that struggle without. The Bucks was one of those teams. Even the Cavs, Deasia. I think Donovan Mitchell is a better player off the ball. He can bring it up sometimes, but they had more success when Garland was in that position, right? So you looking at, and when you compare it to the WNBA, it's right in your face. Like, these teams need a point guard. So this position cannot be phased out. And we just wanted to highlight the value of this position. The point guard is crucial. You know, I was listening to a podcast before when they said this position had originally got phased out. And it's actually with Allen Iverson. And a lot of people don't know that. But really, he was originally a one. you know. But when you see him written down, if you go back and look, you just searching up old rosters, you're going to see him as the two. But when you think about him in the game, he was the one. He was bringing the ball up, Sierra. But they wanted him to become a two because he was just just a flat out scorer. That's what the league, they were the first in taking away this position. But really, he was a one. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, unfortunately, with something that you don't want to happen, but you will start to see that it will happen in other leagues, just like it happened in the NBA, where it's getting phased out because a person is able to score. They're not considered a one. And we know Sir Allen Iverson is a one. Just because you can score, that's the type of player you were. And people don't know that about us. We're two completely different type of point guards. No, I'm not a scoring first point guard. I'm a passing first point guard, where you are a scoring first. And then and when we were playing, what did the coaches do? Well, Sarah, you go to the two so Deasia can be the one. But really, you were just as good at the one if it comes down to scoring, which your game is more similar to what a Allen Iverson or Steph Curry would do. They're going to score. Whereas my game is more similar to what a Rondo would do. I'm going to get the team involved first, then I'll score. Am I going to score 20? Probably not, but I can give you 10. Whereas you will probably score 20. You get what I'm saying, Sarah? But that is what Paige does. She scores, but that's what Kennedy Carter does. But when you don't have that at all, that puts your team at a deficit, because not only do you not score, but you also not able to get the team involved as far as passing. Who's getting involved? You have Angel Reese who have to work so hard. And this is why she gets the flack. Oh, well, she has to get points off the boards. Well, that's because she's not getting a lot of great passes inserted to her. So where else is she supposed to get these points? She has to hustle. She has to get them off the glass. Same with Cardoso. She has to be in great position. You see her running the floor really well right now. But if they had a consistent point guard, this would make her running the floor much easier. Sometimes you run the floor and you may not get the ball. But if you got a great point guard here, maybe not the first time, but the second time, I see you open.
Yeah. Or they can slow, I won't say y'all, they can slow the game down. Put her in a pick and roll, but you got to have that type of player to be able to see this, have the vision, and to get her the ball to make the correct decisions. So if you do have a point guard and you have a post player, depending on how they defend it, it's either, if you stay home, chances are through the pick, you can beat your defender if you take the screen, right? And you go back, the person with the ball goes to the basket. But if they switch, it's a mismatch on both sides, and that's what you want. And this is why you want a point guard on the floor, because it creates those mismatches between a 3 and a 4. Not so much as a mismatch. Between a 4 and a 5, not so much as a mismatch. But between a 1 and a 5, that is a mismatch. A 1 and a 4, that is a mismatch. You get what I'm saying, Deasia? And that's just breaking down basketball.
So shout out point guards here. Who is your top 3 point guards, regardless, all time? That's men or women, whatever game. Who are your top 3 point guards?
This is good. I say undeniably, my first is Steve Nash, because I watched him so much as a kid. I appreciate his game so much. I learned so much as a passer and how to, isolate, get down to the basket, keep your dribble alive. I mean, he was like the king of that, still dribbling under the paint, getting what he wants. So I learned so much of that as a young ball handler. I will say, if I'm talking women, I appreciate Sue Bird's game a lot. It was certain things that she would do before passing. I mean, she's kind of like a taller point guard if you talking about women, but she'll back you down, wait, and then she'll pass you and get to the open man, but she always was available for her shot. So I appreciate that. But just had the poise that she played with, the composure, the game just looked like it came real easy to her, and she enjoyed it. Anytime you watch her play, it never seemed like there was a moment of pressure. And so I appreciated that, and I learned a lot watching her. And then the last point guard, I would say, is probably it's equal, but I'm gonna give it to Kyrie. But in that same breath, it's a few other point guards that I would say is just as good. Steph, and I would even say Rondo. And I know a lot of people, Rondo, they might be shocked about that, but Diaz, I'll let you break that down. But the reason why I'm going to say Kyrie is because his handles is like, this is not even supposed to be on Earth. Like, this is where they do that somewhere else. He don't do that here. If you just think, I think that nobody in the league, current or former, can beat him in a one-on-one just because he can get to wherever he wants. And once you have that ability to break your defender down, you can get any shot. And that's what I learned just watching him. Like, you never want to pick up your dribble, but you want to be so shifty that now you can get to the spot that you want and put up this shot. And he's so efficient around the rim. Like, he doesn't just put the shot up, he finishes the shot. No matter how difficult, Diaz, you think 90% of the time this shot is going in. It doesn't matter where in the paint he puts the shot up, who's defending him. You expecting it to go in because it's Kyrie, and he's already broken his defender down. And if he does that enough, they won't guard him the same late in the third. If he's Deasia breaking you down first, second quarter, after a while you're gonna be like, nah, I'm tired of shifting way over here and he's over here. I'm tired of this. Let me play back, okay, and watch he load up for threes because you're playing him back. So it's like, Deasia, I've learned so much watching point guards. That's a hard question to ask, but that is my top three.
And when I look at it, it's hard to even, I can't even say three. I asked that question, but the more I think about it, it's like you leave names off the list. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's how, like, the top 75, when the NBA wanted to come up with this group, and we like, how is this player not on there? Like, I remember telling somebody, why is Yao Ming not on there? And I remember somebody else telling me, oh, Billups is not on there. But you question, like, why are these players? Like, when I'm trying to come up with top three, it's certain names. Yes, I go Rondo. Yes, I go Kyrie. But then you got to go old school. You got to think of Magic. And then if you think of Magic, how can you not consider that LeBron is a good point guard? Is he a point guard? And then, okay, what about Steve Nash? What about Mike Bibby? You leave so many names. Tony Parker, you put a Billups on there. The list can go on and on. We're not even talking about the girls' side. Yes, you got a Sue Bird. But then I think about Skylar Diggins, just how effective she is in the game and she's still playing. She left and came back. They almost wanted her out of the league, but she's undeniable. You have to recognize just how great of a player she is. So I just I can't go three, Sierra, and it's a hard question. It's a hard task. Maybe we can even do an episode just talking about the greatest point guards of all time on the men and women's side, and there would still be names we would leave off that list.
Yeah, it would.
We just said Allen Iverson, D Rose, like these are players to their point guards.
Yeah, I mean, we did a whole episode. That was our first recorded episode only on D Rose, and the reason because Deja, he just like shattered what point guards. No point guard was jumping out of the gym like he was. It was like insane. I mean, just his bounce, his explosiveness, and then since him has been so many great point guards, or just alongside him, Westbrook. In his prime,
I still put Westbrook here. Just undeniable. That's another player that I think just affects the game in a way that I see that Skylar Diggins does. It's that tenacity, that heart behind it, and she has that. And I think Westbrook, he brings that every time. Whether he's missing or making a shot, you must guard him, and you must think he's a threat. Yeah, he may miss some open shots. He might miss a layup, but Sierra, he never that type of player. Well, this is a bad game for me. Whether the game is a good or bad game, his attitude is the same. And those are the type of players that's what makes great point guards, because you still got to keep that attitude to get others involved.
Absolutely.
So as we transition to the next topic, we talking about attitude. We talking about just like keeping your head in something. There's no sport that's more mental than I think two sports. One of them gymnastics, the other one is track and field.
We have seen a lot of stuff with track just come out recently, and I think that this is something that those in the sport see. Track, I kind of look at it like this is a secret club. It's a high society. It's one of those things where it's almost like we don't get a chance to see it a lot. We can't view it a lot, right? So you can kind of miss out on what's going on. And every 4 years, they kind of introduce us to it again. But for a while, you don't get to know the ins and out of it. That's why I say it's a high society. It's a secret club. But now, they're talking. They're letting us know what's what, right? One of those things is, think about it. How much money are track athletes getting paid. So if they was trying to keep the cat in the bag, the cat is out of the bag. Remember we was talking about the cat is out of the bag. Noah has went on to talk about it. Gabby has went on to talk about it. Gabby Thomas has talked about it. Now we see Allison Felix. These are like some of the biggest voices in track. Oh, who else talked about it? The 400 hurdler, Anna Crawford. She talked about it. So you have all of these huge names. They're talking about it. Like, this sport you don't get paid. And I'm never trying to dim the light on any sport. If anything, yes, these athletes, they work their body. They have a hard schedule. They train all year long. They deserve to be paid just as much as any other athlete. But Noah was explaining, like, hey, anybody can go to a track meet. Me and you can, Deasia. You can have and we're seeing that now. NFL players in their off season are going to the track meets. If you got enough money, if you know somebody, they can go to the track meet. So now everybody's talking about it. Like, where's the money? Allison Felix talked about in her interview that was her biggest expense of going to the Olympics. So if you hear anything out of this podcast, this episode, is that somebody needs to talk about how can track athletes be paid. As a supporter of that sport, Deasia, once running the sport, once doing the sport, participating in it so long, and we do know some professional track athletes, they deserve to be paid just as much as you have your other athletes, just as much as soccer players, just as much as tennis players, just as much, because they're training just as hard. So I think that what Michael Johnson is doing is great. I do think him paying them is great. But it has to be something else too. It has to be some consistent airtime. If they're getting paid by viewership, it has to be some way where we can watch these meets. Just like we're watching the national championships. And if you're going to do it by season, just like you do with other sports, okay, the summer, give it to track. Give it to track. Let us watch it all year. I mean, all summer. So they can get paid. What's your thoughts on that, Tish?
Well, first, when I bring up track, like, I think the beauty in the sport, and I don't want to like discount what you're saying, because I know we talk about pay a lot and we're proponents of pay your athletes. We've been proponents before college started coming out where they're now paying the athletes. That's a different topic. Even the WNBA, we always proponents of that. But I think the beauty in track is that anybody can do it. And I hate to say it, but that's just what makes it a fun sport. Because it's one of those sports where a kid, it's like T-ball, Sierra. Everybody can run if you just learn, and you can be a little athletic and you can get good at this. Or maybe you can't run but you can learn how to jump, or you can, I think it's a couple parts of track where you got to be highly athletic, but for the most part, most sports you need to know how to run, unless you're in a pool,
And that goes to that conversation that we just came across when they was asking what sport are the best athletes out of. I think they said basketball. Somebody was saying hockey. Uh, and I forgot what else, track. But they missed, to me, what I think is the hardest sport. It's gymnastics, because they was comparing skill to athleticism. They said hockey requires a little bit more skill, and tennis was the other one, yes. But I think that the difficulty of gymnastics is every time you get on a balance beam, every time you get on a vault or uneven bars, you risk that not every average person can get up there and swing. You can break your neck. These are hot. Yeah, it's illegal for some people to get up there and do these moves. It's illegal because you can get seriously hurt, right? That's why it requires, to me, this is the most athleticism required to do this. A basketball player couldn't get up there and stand on a balance beam and flip. They can break their neck. But for sure, you can't tell me that a male gymnast couldn't go out on the court and possibly dunk. He probably could. I mean, I know they're shorter, but it doesn't matter. I think that they could if they wanted to, or one of them can shoot probably and hit maybe 3 threes in a row. You get what I'm saying? Or dribble through their legs. It's a little, yeah, you got to be really good at it, but you can't just be really good and think you're a gymnast. Those are really, 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 really good athletes in that sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good take. And that's kind of, I'm not saying, I think track you do. There are some events, like we was talking about it. The pole vault, you need to be athletic. I think the high jump, you need to be athletic. Triple, pretty athletic to do those. But running, I think that the 400 is one of those events where if you got that height factor, you're fast, you could do it. I don't think the 100 just anybody can go do that, but I don't think you have to be the best athlete. But I think going back to my initial point, what makes track and field so amazing as a sport is because anybody can do it. It's not basketball where you have to be thinking this game. Yes, the 400, there's very technical. The 2, the 1, they are all technical when you get up there in the sport. But when you're starting out, you don't need to think about it. Just run. Basketball, you need to learn how to dribble. You need to develop a shot and know how to finish around the rim. Track, just run. And so that amateurness is what I'm talking about. It carries on into the professional level, and that's what has happened. And it's happened in college, and that was upfront and personal for us. We would be at meets, and we were D1 athletes in college, and you would see us. We could run against a D2 school. Now, we did not go to a major D1. We went to mid-major. So maybe that is the reason why sometimes some of our meets, now, that's not to say that we didn't have huge meets, because we did. We had meets where we're going against Minnesota, Kansas, maybe even, I don't know, we just went to Nebraska, big teams in the Midwest. But we also had meets where we might go against a D2 or even a junior college, because those were smaller meets, and that amateurness carries on in college. It doesn't stop, and it's obviously, we didn't know, but it's not stopping in the professional level either. Technically, Tyreek Hill is an amateur at track. He's not professional. Now Nike might pay him because he just won a meet, but if you want to call a spade, he's an amateur at this professional sport, and that amateurness carries on. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. But I get what you're saying, Sarah. You need to pay them. But at the same time, I think don't take the beauty away from this sport. Keep it the way it is. It puts the professionals, you have to run faster, because anybody can be fast. There was teammates on my team, Sarah, that were very fast. These were people that's making it to the NCAAs, but they just weren't as fast as the top 10, at the NCAAs. But were they fast? Yes. Somebody was running a 51 and a 400 at Illinois State. You get what I'm saying, Sierra? That's still not fast enough to make that Olympic team. That just shows how fast these professionals are. So if you're going to be an amateur in this sport, you can't just be fast. You have to be really fast. And that's the difference between those getting paid and those are not. Because yes, you can go run, and then if you get fast enough and you go beat some of these Olympics, yeah, you're going to make that Olympics team. And then maybe Nike will pay you if you go down there and win. But if you go down there and you don't win, then they're not going to pay you. And I don't disagree with that, because we can't forget that this is really an amateur sport. And it takes a lot of mental stamina to be able to realize that when you're competing at this sport, it's going to take some moments where you might not be the best, but you're competing with the best.
Yeah.
And that's continuous, whether you're a kid or a professional. That's just this sport. It's beautiful in that sense, but this sport, it takes a lot of mental capacity. And I'm not saying don't co-pay them, but don't take away to saying, oh, now since we have amateurs coming into this professional sport, the professionals need to get paid more. No, you got to just continue what you're doing. Let the world catch up, which is what these other leagues have done. The WNBA don't get a chance to say, let's bring in a bunch of practice players and see if they can make our team. They keep it real secluded, just like what track and field was trying to do. But you can't do that when you got a Tyreek Hill that's faster than some of your professionals. You got to decide who you're going to pay. You're either going to pay him or you're not going to pay him. You're going to pay him or the professional. Because he's going to be professional as soon as he gets paid.
Yeah.
And that's what track does, Sarah. It gives anybody the opportunity. And that's why I like it. It pits people like Gabby Thomas. You gotta be, yes, it's mentally draining to say I'm going to a meet and I don't know if I'm going to get paid, or I don't know if I'm going to get the TV time, or this meet might not pay and I could get beat by an amateur. But it's going to put some fire behind your back, because you need to keep winning.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't slip up when it comes Olympic time. You got to keep winning. I mean, Allison Felix can get up there and talk all she wants here, but we know her name, and Nike has done that for her. Yes, she might not get the biggest bag, but that's the sport. It's unfortunate. It's just what it is.
I understand that. I can't go against that, even though I do think that it has to be some equity. And speaking of equity, Deasia, There was a big thing that happened last week where now we see that college made a huge move. The NCAA was ruled in the settlement that was going on for a while that now colleges can play D1 athletes directly. And I think every school gets like a $20.5 million budget or something like that. It's a lot of money. And the bulk of it, of course, it's going to go to football. But it's still a big deal for the athletes. And DH, I think that maybe we can save that conversation. But just if you're listening, that was something huge. That if you follow sports, go and read up on that. Go and understand that. We're going to go over that in detail. But I think that when you talk about pay, college is trying to bring equity. And now it did create a gap in between people's judgment of that. Some people think that college sports has now changed into professional sports because of it. But if you think of all of those athletes, Deasia, you was a D1 athlete. I was a D1 athlete. All of these players and athletes that did a sport and was not compensated in any way. In fact, you might have been somewhere and you did everything you could for a sport and you got a full ride tuition. Maybe, some of us were fortunate enough to, but there's a lot that didn't. And for some athletes to be compensated, and that's huge no matter what, and that's just my opinion of it. Now we can go into detail about it is some rules, it's going to be some technicalities of that, and it is going to change sports altogether. I'm not denying that, but let's think about the wins of this settlement. So I just wanted to throw that out there because what you said reminded me of this, and that's why we need to talk about equity. When we talk about equity, inclusion, all of these things, diversity, and all of these other industries, let us not leave out sports because there's a lot to be gained in the progression of that when it comes to sports. There's still a lot of room, especially when it comes to women athletes. Speaking of women athletes, we had a huge moment with Coco Gauff. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, she said if you can dream it, you could do it. If along those lines, something like that. It's one of the first things as a kid that you can actually dream and say, I want to be a professional athlete. And a lot of people don't get that opportunity, but people do. People actually do. And if you look around at all these people that get to go to that next level, it's exciting. And it's not even just all the time about being a professional athlete. Some people just want to get college paid for and let sports take you as far as you can. But look at what Coco Gauff has been able to do. She's setting a new standard for African Americans, blacks in this sport, this tennis. It's not a huge black sport. You had Serena and Venus, but now you constantly get them passing the torch to the next huge athlete. And guess what? She's black. If you're a young girl and you want to play tennis, we had a Serena and Venus, but now you got a Coco Gauff. And that's what is amazing.
And I love that image that they have, that video of her sitting right next to Venus, like cheering. And for her, like this, we see this like what, 15, 20, I don't know how long, all of these years later. And you see where that now she's that woman where this little girl is out in the stands. So I'm glad we have the representation. It's been huge just to watch her victory, watch that moment for her to win the French Open, which hadn't been done since 2015 by Serena Williams. Right. Just remarkable. I mean, it took all of those years. And then if you just think of the progression, then her value, anyway, I think she's valued at like 30 something million is her net worth. I mean, that's huge. If you just talk about women in sports, Deasia, what the possibilities are. And we just hoping that those other sports can catch up. But that's Coco Gauff's moment, and we had to highlight that. Shout out to her. And for whoever has something to say about that. If you ain't with us, you against us. And we're supporting her.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing for sports. It's amazing for women's sports. Like, keep setting the bar higher and higher and changing the face of this sport. I'm just glad that we get to watch. And she's not that old. That's what's amazing, too. So it seems like she has a long career ahead of her.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we have somebody else, but she does everything with so much poise. I like her. Now she's on her victory lap. She's going around. She's interviewing. But the reason why I say if you're not with us, you're against us, is because we did see her opponent say some questionable things, and I just want to say Coco had to play in the same conditions. I mean, it's always funny to me when somebody uses that as an excuse, as if you were running, like I didn't run in the rain. Like, I didn't play in the snow. I didn't play football in the snow. We were in the same conditions. So
that's what, going back to track, what makes that sport so beautiful, because nobody can ever say, oh yeah, you won because you was in the rain. Weren't you in the same heat as me? We both ran in the rain. Like, I just took advantage of my what I did. You let that be a factor for you. I mean, in basketball, yeah, somebody can say, well, that water was right there where
or you was at your home court.
Yeah, or that water was spilled right there in front of where I was about to make my move. Okay, well, that's different. But again, you could even be saying, remember that time where they played one of them playoff games here and they didn't have the air conditioning on? But and LeBron was in that series. Both teams they couldn't use that as an excuse. Both teams was playing in that same environment. So I like what you said there.
But that's what I say, even if you compare it to football. Hey, might be playing this game in the snow, but both teams are playing in the snow. Baseball, you might be playing in extreme heat. Both teams are playing in extreme heat. Like, it's funny that one opponent, as if was this a virtual game? Or were you out on the same field?
Yeah, you can't use an excuse in sports. Like, really, excuse in sports, you can keep them to yourself because you just got to go back to the drawing board and go work harder. Like, that's really what it comes down to.
I think you mentioned that in one of our earlier episodes too. We said the same thing about boxing. Like, you're both out there.
Right. I remember we was talking about them women, and somebody had made a comment. It didn't make sense, but again, it was opponent. It's always the losing opponent that does this. That's just bad sportsmanship. And we're talking about positivity. Yeah, we might say some things about money and pay, but really we try to be super positive. And one thing, if you want to take something away, is that please don't be a sore loser, or even a poor loser. Just go back and go work hard again. Like, that's the beauty. Sarah, how many games we done lost? How many races we done lost? I lose to you. Literally, you're my opponent with track. But what do? I just gotta get back up and say I'm not losing again. And sometimes when we look at our races here, it comes down to one thing: who wanted more.
And that's the beauty of sport. Why would you get yourself here to play a sport and not be willing to lose? See, that's the beauty of it. It's always going to be a winner and a loser. But why would you lace up your shoes? Why would you lace up if you're not willing to lose? You just as much as you're willing to win. And it's crazy that I'm going to say this. It's going to sound crazy, but if you understand, you feel me. Just as much as you're willing to win, you have to be willing to lose. Because if you put your best out there, your best may not be their best. Their best may be better. That's the beauty of sport. Sport is not a fair, like, everybody wins. That's not this type of competition. I don't know any competition where everybody wins. That's not life. And sports is one of the greatest teachers of life. That there's always going to be a winner and a loser. But that's how you have to get better. If you are a sore loser, well, I'm sorry to say, your character is I don't want to come at you as a person, but it shows that your character needs some growth, some development there. Because if you put your best out there, you just have to understand, like, I lost today and I'm not going to make an excuse. That's our point here. How can you play sports and keep making excuses? And then you're at the highest level on national television making these excuses. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
The perfect example of what you're saying is here. When you're looking at, like, if, say, for the soccer, and you have the one team is going to win gold. So you got the first and second place. And then you got the third and fourth place game. Now, the third and fourth place game, that usually takes forth the day before or right before, right, Sierra? And that team is settled. You got the third place team. The second place team is going to lose. Somebody is going to lose, and that's how they get second place. But second place is still better than third. You'd rather be playing for third or fourth, you get no medal. Or you'd rather be playing for first and second, you lose, but you still get a medal.
Right.
Because the fourth place team literally does not get anything.
But somebody said it like this: yeah, your second place team is just the first loser. I mean, you lost. And I don't want to like glorify that, but that's what it is. I mean, in the Olympics, Deasia, it's still huge to get a medal. You won a medal. That is a huge accomplishment. And I think we talked about this before also. Like it is a great accomplishment. But just understand, you did not win gold, and that is the highest achievement. It's the highest achievement. Just like these finals, Deasia. One team is going to win. They won their Eastern Conference. One team won the Western Conference, right? But they did not win the finals. We can go back and say, Deasia, Indiana won the Eastern Conference. OKC won the Western Conference in 2025. But one of those teams is going to be second place overall. And that's just what it is. It is what it is. I don't like to, like you said, Yash, we need to stay positive. But when it comes to sports, that's the truth. This is something that can't change. It's a winner and a loser.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just at the end of the day, you got to get better. You got to go back and practice, and that's really serious. That's the journey. It's the journey when you look back. All them nights. That comes with life. Like whatever you're doing now, Sierra.
And then that's kind of a good question, Deasia. Once you kind of show poor sportsmanship, are you cutting the journey short? Are you?
I don't think you cutting the journey short, but I think you discounting all of the work that you doing. You're kind of cutting yourself short. I don't think it's the journey. I think it's like you discrediting yourself. Like you're not recognizing that, hey, maybe this wasn't my best day. That doesn't mean I'm not a good athlete. And stop taking away from this person. That's showing my poor character. Like you were saying, I'm just calling a spade a spade. And we've all had the moments where like, dog, I didn't play my best. But I don't never go back and say, well, I didn't play my best, but that person only beat me because of this. Well, they beat me, and I'm not to say that we always been perfect athletes, because that's what's something you got to develop too. You got to learn how to be a good athlete. We don't all come out saying, well, dog, I had a great game, or I didn't had a bad game, but so and so didn't do well. You got to learn how to be better with that.
I think that is the moments where you become better. That's the biggest moments. Like when we recognize, like even our dad was our biggest coach. Before he can say something, when like, dang, I could have played better, or dang, you know what, my shot just wasn't getting off like it should have. I was shooting flat today. Those are the moments when you don't have to tell me, but I'm not gonna make excuses like that. They wasn't passing me the ball in my pocket, or hey, I was being double teamed all game. The coach didn't recognize they was playing me in a box and one. I can't make excuses for this, right? It's those moments when you develop the most. When you look back like, okay, this is what happened for me. This is what I could have improved on, and this is how I'm going to get better. We see it at every level, but it's something that this is still happening on a professional level. So it's just room for growth for that young lady. And it's great to see Coco receive that. She didn't allow that to bother her, and she did not feed into those words. I think that her response, just keep it about the main thing, about the main thing. She won, and this was a big moment. I'm not going to allow your comments to take away from that.
It's amazing at the end of the day that we got to shout out Coco. We got to shout out women's sports. We got to shout out track. These are things we talked about. And the NBA playoffs is exciting. It's been very exciting. So this is our episode. We coming to a close. I'm going to just leave off with saying, Sarah, who do you think is going to take it? You asked me that question, but you didn't say who you thought is going to take the NBA playoffs.
I agree. I don't have a dog in this fight. But see, I like Shea, but he's not the team. If I'm talking about team, I would like to see Indiana win as a team, opposed to just Shea winning as a player. So I'm going to go with Indiana. I feel like when they're making plays, kind of leaning towards, I want them in the end. You get that feeling like, even though you claim you don't want any other team, I feel myself. And the same thing happens for me in football. Like,
It's kind of impossible to not root for anybody.
I'm kind of still rooting like, they didn't catch that ball. Or
to not root for anybody is to kind of not watch. When you're watching, you gotta. It's like you almost still rooting for somebody.
Let's kind of like start thinking about that. Like we always say, I ain't got a dog in this fight, but I'm gonna start keeping track. I'm gonna start keeping a mental tally. Like when am I leaning towards? Because that means, is it impossible to not root for anybody? Then you must not be watching. I think that was a bold statement. Like I never heard that, but you are right. Because I always feel like when I say I'm not rooting, I technically am. Like I'm still like, dang, they just turned the ball over.
You go around and you ask somebody, are you rooting for somebody or not? and you find out the people that's really not, they probably don't even watch it. You know, they're indifferent. They're completely indifferent to it.
Yeah,
They'll just see the highlights.
It's
Those are the
probably
people that
somebody,
don't truly
and
care.
we got a lot of friends like that. They ask me, did I watch the game? And it's just like, oh, okay. And then I ask them the next day, did you watch the game? They don't even know who played. Like, we know a lot of people like that, and that's fine. We're big sports fans. Even if I didn't watch the Asian, when those conversations come up, it's like, who was I leaning towards? Do I like this city for that? Do I like this for that? It's some things about it. But this is sports, and this is nothing lightly. We back, y'all. We back. Deasia, let's close it out.
Yeah, so you know how we coming. Like, you can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Instagram. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. But most importantly, like, keep listening to us and subscribe to our Spotify, our Apple. Listen to our episodes. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you're thinking.